right. Good evening, everyone. The regular meeting of the Independent School District 279 School Board is called to order at 6 o'clock p.m. on January 25th, 2022. This regular business meeting of the Osseo School Board is being conducted in person. The meeting can be monitored electronically by streaming online from the district website. An archive recording of tonight's meeting will also be available on the district website. Seated in front of you this evening, from my left to your right, Director Heather Douglas, Director Thomas Brooks, Director Jackie Mosqueda-Jones, myself, Kelsey Dawson-Walton, Director Tanya Simons, and Director Tamara Grady. Superintendent Corey McIntyre and General Counsel Tim Palmatier are also present in the boardroom, along with our student school board representatives. Tonight we have Cal Thorson from Maple Grove, and Hanaya Dabney from Park Center, Faith with Osseo Senior, and Nadia from the OILC are not able to be with us this evening. For those of you who can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Simons, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board members, are there any any additions to the agenda? Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? Motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Our next agenda item is student school board representatives reports. I'll call on each representative to give their report. First, we'll go with Hanaya with Park Center.
Hi, my name is Hanaya. I'm a sophomore at Park Center, and Park Center is currently having their 7th annual Asian New Year on February 5th, and I'm pretty sure everyone is welcome. So if any of you guys are interested, you may talk to me. And also, I think that the 2 weeks off for distance learning was a good decision because there are a lot of absent students and staff. So I feel like that was needed to happen in order for the school to come back safer and for it to be a better environment. Also, I think that in-person school is great too because it's more engaging for the students and the teachers, and I think it's a better learning environment.
Thank you. And Cal, Maple Grove Senior.
I'm Cal. I'm from Maple Grove Senior High. Just a few updates from Maple Grove Senior High. So we've been kind of getting into the middle winter months, getting a little bit more boring now, getting into school. One of the things we do get to look forward to in the winter months is snow days. So that had to be pushed back because of the 2 weeks of distance learning that we had to do. But luckily that got rescheduled for February 12th. That's a dance where we can have a spirit week coming up to the snow days dance, and it's just fun to have that little break in school where we can all look forward to something. The transition to online learning, I would say, was a lot of mixed emotions. A lot of kids love online learning, but I can say that a lot of kids are happy to be back too. It's always fun seeing friends in person. One thing that I'd like to highlight that we did a couple weeks ago, myself being a senior, a big thing for our school is senior interviews. So members of our community are nice enough to come in and perform mock interviews with our seniors just to give them an idea of that idea of career communications and give them the opportunity to learn more about how they can conduct interviews and do well when preparing for their careers and college interviews and stuff like that. One more thing I'd like to highlight actually is a club that we have at Maple Grove Senior High. HOSA Club is the Health Occupation Students of America Club. It's where students can practice their interpersonal skills and learn more about the medical field. They meet once every 2 weeks, and I believe they have some sort of competition too that they get to compete in. And that's just a cool opportunity for kids that want to look into the medical field or are pursuing that in college.
All right. Thank you both. The student representatives have reviewed the board meeting packet in advance, and they're prepared to answer questions from board members on issues to seek student input related to agenda items for this evening's meeting. So I'm going to open up to board members. Do you have any agenda items for which you'd like students' input?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
So I
hate to put you in this position, being the voice for a very large student body, but I'm just wondering what your perspective is on students wanting to, or our scholars wanting to continue with the mask requirement or end them on January 31st.
For the mask requirement, I think that we should continue with the masks for at least the rest of the year, because it's not only keeping others safe, but it's keeping yourself safe too. And at first, the masks were annoying, but I would like to be in person. But I feel like if we were to not wear masks, then we would have to go on distance learning. So as long as we can be in person and as safe as possible, I don't have a problem with the masks. And we are able to not wear the masks when we're doing our sports, which is still fine. So that's my opinion. And the students too.
I have nothing to add to that. That was perfect.
All right, thank you so much. Any other board member questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much. We very much enjoy your input here with us. All right. The next agenda item is audience opportunity to address the board. I'm going to review a few of the guidelines for those who will speak to the board. During audience opportunity to address the board, I will ask each speaker who has submitted a speaker card to come up. We ask that speakers keep their comments to 3 minutes. The board does not take action or discuss matters during this portion of the meeting. Speakers may be referred to the superintendent or staff if follow-up is necessary. The complete guidelines for public participation are provided on the meeting materials table and on the school board section of the district website. When I call your name, please come to the microphone and state your name, your topic, and also state whether or not you are a district resident. And we have a full house tonight, and I think there's even folks in the cafeteria. Just a reminder, we do want to hear everyone's voice tonight. So the first up is Dr. Leanne Peterson.
My name is Dr. Leanne Peterson. I am a resident in the district as well as an employee. I'm here to speak about negotiations. So, good evening, Chair Dawson-Walton, board members, and district staff. My name is Dr. Leanne Peterson, and I'm a longtime employee of the Osseo area schools and currently a special education teacher at Rush Creek Elementary. I'm a product, a parent, and an employee in this district. In fact, I've spent 85% of my life within the 279 boundaries. I do believe in the power of responsive classroom and restorative practices to help create deep relationships and build a sense of community in the classroom. To build community this evening, I'm inviting teachers to join me in an activity called Just Like Me so we can learn more about each other. I will read different statements from teachers across the district, and if that statement matches your thoughts or experiences, the teachers will respond just like me. I am pretty sure I will run out of time before I get through all of these items, but here we go. I chose teaching because I was passionate about my subject, the students, and I believed I could make a difference. Just like me. I am at school before my contract hours, often arriving in the dark. Just like me. I am at school after my contract hours, often leaving in the dark. Just like me. I bring work home on a nightly basis. Just like me. I lose sleep worrying about my students. Just like me. I lose sleep thinking about my workload and my long to-do list that faces me every morning. Just like me. I love the art of teaching, but the demands from outside my classroom keep me from my art. Just like me. I have planned and graded work for a sub while I was out sick or in quarantine. Just like me. I routinely work more than 50 hours each week. Just like me. I sit in the parking lot some mornings convincing myself to go inside the school. Just like me. The students make me smile. Just like me. I offer support to stressed, depressed, anxious, and overworked coworkers. Just like me. I answer student emails outside of school hours because they need that same support. Just like me. I count the days or years until retirement or consider early retirement. Just like me. I regularly look for other careers. Just like me. I give up time on the weekends to grade papers and write lesson plans. just like me.
My family suffers because I am not present.
Just like me.
I greet students with a smile.
Just like me.
I am tired.
Just like me.
Every day, I do my best to support students to become confident, to have courage, and to achieve the skills to become lifelong learners.
Just like me.
As you enter your closed negotiation strategy session tonight, I encourage you to reflect on these statements in this Just Like Me activity. With the increasing teacher shortage due to the trauma and stress we teachers are experiencing, you need to think about the teachers and what we do and what we feel. When District 279 students needed caring, competent educators to help them thrive in these extraordinary times, we were there for them. We stepped up for our community's children, and we continue to show up for our students to advocate and support them in time of need. We need the board to show up in our time of need to advocate and support for us. We need a fair and competitive contract now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up is Krista Chapa.
Hi, my name's Krista Chapa. I live in Maple Grove with my 3 daughters and my husband, we attend District 279. Our family attends Basswood Elementary. In my opinion, hopefully, a lot of science-based information and logic will be shared tonight, has been shared, and will continue to be shared. But the real issue here we need to focus on is our kids. Your kids in 279. The school board, the entire education system, should not make health or medical decisions for our children. The education system serves primarily 2 main focuses. 1, education, and 2, safety. Safety. Why are we ignoring the dangers at school? I know there's been a very large uprising in areas that need discipline, but children aren't being disciplined properly. These children are continuing to go back in the classroom, creating a dangerous environment. This safety is very important. It's super important we fix this. This leads me back to the safety of masks. What are the long-term effects of masking our kids? 2 years old and up? Over 8 hours a day, not to mention the effectiveness of masks has been come out recently. Many studies, I'm not going to go over them, you can all look them up. You know it's true. Continue to increase, and we've been using the same strategy. The same strategy we've been using for 2 years. Wear masks, keep cases down. Cases are not down, cases are up. We are still forcing our kids to wear masks. Sorry, my notes are terrible. I lost my education note. Anyways, education is the most important thing. We aren't even focusing on education right now. We've lost that focus. We're focused on so many other things, making sure people are healthy and able to be at school. We are not focusing on the numbers or the low test scores that are in this district right now. This needs to happen. We need to focus on those things and get back to worrying about masks and worrying about them putting on their nose. We need to worry about, if we do distance learning, are the kids still getting the same education that they would in school? I know my kids kept coming upstairs. They're like, oh, we're on an extra break. Is that okay? If it's only for 7 days. But if we go back to it, we need to have a strategy in place that the kids that are at home are getting the same education. They're following the same strategies to improve their education. I don't understand, the school board, how you guys can continue to vote for our kids to wear masks. I've seen many of you outside at activities with yourself, your children, going on trips, not wearing masks. It's been time. Please vote for our kids and the rights of parents. You can have your kid wear a mask if you want to. My kid's done. Thank you.
All right, Colette Guyette Hump. I'm sorry.
You're doing very well.
I'm doing better, right? Okay.
Good evening, board. Before I start, I want to give a shout out and say thank you to the teachers. What a pleasure. My son is almost 29, and 23 years ago, I had the fortunate luck of meeting his first grade teacher. She's still teaching in this district tonight. So thank you all again. But here I am once again because of discrimination in the community ed booklets towards Brooklyn Park kids. Condoleezza Rice said it best. If I can look at your zip code and I can tell whether you're going to get a good education, we've got a problem. And I think Dr. King would be embarrassed that the children in 6 elementaries in Brooklyn Park, 2 middle schools, and 1 senior high have absolutely no classes listed in here. Although I do think the high school has a driver's ed, but other than that, they're out of luck. Edinburgh in the fall had 5, now it's got 2. Woodland had 11 in the fall, now it's got 8. And yet there's over 100 classes, if not closer to 200, in Maple Grove schools. What a disgusting thought. Every school south of 85th in Brooklyn Park, yes, once again, on the east side of 169, is getting a disservice from this district. What a disgrace. Yes, I'm going off script from this. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." This is not character, folks. You may have other programs, but compensatory funds are not to be used to replace this. You have in your packet the state statute regarding community ed. Children at risk are supposed to be given extra opportunities. This is a disgrace. And you know what? We're paying close to 200 grand, if not more, for a superintendent that's supposed to supervise this. What a disgrace. Brooklyn Park taxpayers pay for this district too. They pay for the community ed, and we expect better than this. Most people won't come across, most people don't even realize the difference. But this is pathetic, because I have been at this podium and in different schools at school board meetings since before my son was even in school, over this exact issue of things not being equal in this district. What a disgrace. And it's the kids that are suffering.
Thank you. Now, our next agenda item is the superintendent's report. Superintendent McIntyre.
All right, good evening, board members. Thank you, Chair Dawson-Walton. So first tonight, I'm going to start with our points of pride, which is a regular part of the superintendent's report. And with the new established mission of the board, so to inspire and prepare each and every scholar with the confidence, courage, and competence to achieve their dreams, contribute to community, and engage in a lifetime of learning. I'm very excited. This is the annual week to recognize our ESPs, our educational support professionals. January 24th through 28th is Paraprofessional Recognition Week as through a proclamation by Governor Walz. There are more than 800 ESPs in our district who work hard every day along with our teaching staff and other staff members in multiple departments throughout the organization to make sure every child has the education they need to succeed in school and life. And especially this year and really the last 2 years, but in our current reality, we're incredibly thankful for our ESPs who provide so much dedication to our students and families to help achieve our mission for each and every scholar. So again, a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of our educational support professionals in ISD 279. Next, Osseo Area Learning Center has been named as the Minnesota Alternative School of the Year by Minnesota Association of Alternative Programs. Thank you. We're very, very excited, but we already knew this. It's an outstanding program, and our OALC was chosen for this award for their individualized learning with high expectations, a welcoming and inclusive environment, and a holistic support for students and families. Teachers at our OALC said, and I quote, "The scholars at OALC are beautiful, brilliant learners who can and will achieve at high levels when given the opportunity and support to do so. We have never seen a staff more willing and able to foster this brilliance among scholars." The OALC will receive this statewide award and will be honored as the MAAP School of the Year at the annual conference, which is virtual due to COVID, on Friday, February 4th from 12 to 1. So again, congratulations to our Osseo Area Learning Center staff and students and families. Next, I just wanted to highlight our 279 online school was recently featured by CCX Media for giving students the opportunity to find their voice in an online setting. 279 Online offers students such as Brandon Brown opportunities for volunteer services such as helping younger students with their homework. Brandon said, and I quote, "It definitely makes me feel better about myself because I know that I'm helping people and it's kind of important to me. Not to be selfish, but it looks good for college as well because I've been able to handle my schoolwork and tutoring other people." So thank you very much, Brandon, and many others who are serving in that capacity. In the area of achieving dreams, Maple Grove Senior High School's debate team conquered their season and is heading to nationals this summer in Louisville, Kentucky. In public forum, a two-person team debate category, Layla Uli and Mira Cook and Seth Darusha and Tamir Usinov finished as national qualifiers. However, Ali and Cook do not plan to attend nationals, so Amira Ralston and Baini Singh have the opportunity to attend instead and are also national qualifiers. Andrew Ladhini is also heading to nationals as a qualifier in the Lincoln Douglas debate category. So congratulations to our scholars. Yeah, thank you. Ashanti's Bounds was featured as a standout student also by CCX Media. Ashantes is part of the Link crew, so welcoming incoming freshmen at Park Center Senior High, and also has her own hairstyling shop. Teachers and staff at Park Center High describe Bounds' positive spirit as, in quotes, being a light to uplift her classmates. Very proud of her. In the area of contributing to community, Maple Grove Senior High student Kat Bierce made the most of the COVID environment last year when she started her own business, Love Luna. Kat designs, sews and sells, Kat designs and sews and sells dog bandanas and donates 20% of her profits from the designs to nonprofit groups. She says it's very satisfying and exciting to be able to help people while doing something fun. Just wanted to give back to help people and make their day. Before winter break, students in this, you can see here in the photo, spread cheer to hospital teams in the North Memorial Health Systems through pictures, cards, and notes. Classes from Elm Creek, Weaver Lake, Basswood, Cedar Island, Osseo, Northfield, Maple Grove Middle Schools, and Park Center and Osseo Senior Highs expressed appreciation to hospital teams throughout the Adopt a Hospital program. I'm very proud of this because this came to our attention right before break and we turned this around in just a couple days. The response was tremendous, and thank you so much to the staff and our scholars who jumped right into this before we went out on our winter break. So very, very great partnership with North Memorial Health System. In the area of lifelong learning, for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, kindergartners at Parkbrook Elementary learned about Martin Luther King Jr. and made portraits of him out of construction paper. And students at Maple Grove Senior High discussed the importance of activists like Claudette Colvin and read the letter from Birmingham Jail. Aisha Main, a senior at Osseo Senior High and another CCX Media Standout Student, received the National African American Recognition Award from the College Board National Recognition Program. To qualify, students must have a 3.5 GPA and have outstanding performance on the PSAT, so congratulations. In the area of mission-driven employees, as here in the picture, Monica Healy, the music teacher at Oakview Elementary School, used the recent temporary transition to online learning to find new ways to engage with her students. She has focused not only on creating music, but joy with her students during this time. She said, in quotes, "Music educators have reinvented the wheel to provide engaging lessons, keep kids making music wherever they are, and continue to find the joy that is always present in music." We're so proud to have her in our district. The holiday season, there's lots of points of pride tonight. We're really doing a lot of good things. I just want to make sure we point all these out. So this holiday season, Osseo Area Schools social workers Melody Hahn Merges and Kendra Kuhlman partnered with Boston Scientific in their Season of Giving program for the 12th year. The intention of the program is to make the holiday season a little less challenging for some families by providing essential items and support from the community. A team of 7 volunteers were able to organize and distribute boxes for 65 families. Every 10 minutes, a car was filled with the items including clothing, food, and gifts for families to enjoy. So a huge thank you to these social workers for representing our district and giving back to the community. And lastly, I just want to share a couple of reminders this evening. Join the District 279 Foundation A Night Out experience on February 4th for an social hour, games, silent auction, and dinner and program. Tickets are required for this event and can be purchased online. Benefits the students in our district through the foundation. The deadline another announcement tonight is the deadline for trimester 3 in-district transfer applications is also coming up soon, February 10th. Please reach out to the enrollment center with any questions. And just a quick reminder about the weather tonight, very cold again. Wind chills are, again, fairly cold and late this evening and into tomorrow. So as of now, we are still planning to hold school in person as scheduled, but we continue to monitor the forecast well into the night, well into the early morning. And our weather team will continue to do that and stay in regular contact with the National Weather Service and neighboring school districts over the next several hours. If the weather does worsen and an e-learning day is needed, families will be notified in a number of ways, including phone and email messages, as well as staff too. But again, at this time, we are still set to be in person. A number of the details are included on our winter weather webpage at district279.org/weather. So with that, Chair Dawson-Walton, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. It just reminds me of, everything that the points of pride, the vision that we have adopted, unleash and enhance the brilliance of each and every scholar to thrive and change the world. And I think that's what we heard tonight in your points of pride. So I'm just so impressed by all of our students and scholars. Our next agenda item is school board reports. Director Douglas, do you have a reporter update?
I don't believe I do.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Director Brooks?
Just a quick update. There was a RISE committee meeting since the last school board meeting. They, very similarly to DPAC, are doing a deep dive into data right now. Looks like they've adopted sort of a theme for the year or a focus, which is hearing our family stories. So that's sort of the lens of which they are using as they continue to do a deep dive through data and just get a better understanding of where we are and the disparities that exist. But there's more to come on that.
All right. Thank you. Director Mosqueda-Jones.
There are fewer committee meetings happening in December, which is why many of us just have simple updates. I have one update on District 287. The contract was finalized with the new superintendent in 287, Marcy Dowd. We had an organizational meeting and we welcomed 2 new board members. Short and sweet.
Okay. Thank you. Director Simon.
No, I don't have any committee meetings, but this next week will be packed, so next time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Director Grady.
I did fill in for Jackie Mosqueda-Jones at the Northwest Suburban Integration District, so we're passing the baton on that one. And then otherwise, we would have had a teacher negotiations meeting a couple weeks ago, but because of our teacher shortage crisis, we had to cancel that, but I'm looking forward to our next session tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have a committee update, but I do want to say that over the last couple of weeks, we have, our district hosted 2 virtual legislative breakfasts. And so our district leadership covered, a number of topics, including an overview of who we are as a district, what we've been up to, how we've invested with our ESSER dollars, our vision for a future, and our legislative platform. So I just think it goes to show we had great turnout from our legislators and how important it is to have the strong relationships we have with our very hardworking legislators. So, all right, so our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items you'd like to remove for separate consideration? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Director Grady, seconded by Director Brooks to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, our first action item is the 2021-2022 COVID-19 Preparedness Plan, resolution on mask face coverings, and I will hand it over to Superintendent McIntyre.
All right, thank you again, Chair Dawson Walton and board members. So the updated resolution in your materials tonight has been provided to you. And we wish to provide you with a presentation here as Kay and our team are kind of getting ready to get the presentation pulled up. We'd like to get through that presentation and ask that you kind of hold your questions and comments till the discussion portion at the end so that we can really give you the full picture of the presentation and all the information. This evening, members of our administrative team will be sharing, and really from our COVID team, we'll be sharing our preparedness plan update and the district's resolution on masks and face coverings. And and I feel like I say this every meeting, but it still keeps being worth saying, since 2020, I'm so grateful for our scholars, our families, and our staff to continue to work through so many changes and different decision-making points with different types of data and information available at the time. To adjust to the ever-changing COVID-19 impacts. And you've heard me say this quote a number of times with the Maya Angelou quote, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. And it feels like we've been learning a lot throughout this pandemic, and I know that it's understood that with our best intentions, we're making the best decisions we have with the information available at the time, and then it feels like the next day or the next hour something new comes, and we have to react to that. So throughout the last few weeks and few months, the board has said you would like us to find a way to use local metrics for our decision-making that's easy to understand when it comes to our mitigation strategies, including masking, and that has been a request for a significant amount of time. And I would say few other districts have done this, and the state has not articulated a way to do this. So we are coming to you with a proposal that's a bit in a leadership or pioneering role in this. We've been consulting with one other local district that has also kind of been finding a way to do this as well. But because we don't have a lot to work with, it's been an awkward position for us, right? And the state and county and city level data is becoming less and less useful for decision making. And you'll hear why about that a little bit later. So tonight, we'll be proposing to you a revised resolution on masking and face coverings that continues our current requirements through February 18th, therefore making a transition and delegating the superintendent decisions, delegating to the superintendent and our team the decisions related to those mitigation efforts based on a new model that we're proposing that's more geared towards local data in our school by school settings. So with the details here, I've asked Troy Schreifels, our Director of Facilities, Transportation, and Risk Management, who leads our COVID team. Others from the team will be joining him tonight to walk you through the details in the proposed model that we believe we are poised to move on to as a next step. So thank you, Troy.
Thank you, Superintendent McIntyre. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dawson Walton, board members, community members, teachers, and I see a few of our district COVID team that's in the audience as well. Those include some of our district nurses and others that participate weekly and daily and hourly on this task, which has never been an easy one. And I appreciate their effort at the site level. I appreciate your level or your support as well in the classroom. It's been a very challenging year, to say the best or the least. And with that too, I also have Dave Mordock, our Coordinator of Risk Management, who helps me oversee this big monumental task, and Colin O'Brien, who is our District COVID Coordinator. So he works directly with the entire team and then supports the site-based teams as well. So I've asked them tonight to provide information, just like we did last week. We'll start out with a brief update of where we sit as a district and give you some updates regarding that. And a couple months ago, we talked about considerations going into break and how that's evolved. And that break has occurred, and now we've come back. We've seen some interesting up and downs in the last couple of weeks. We'll share just some brief updates on that. We'll transition into our recommendation for a masking policy for the district that will help support and balance the needs of the system, we hope. So with that, I'd like to give you an update on our current status for staffing. Last week, we heard from Laurel Anderson, our Executive Director of HR, regarding staffing, and so she's provided me a quick update. We've only had 2 days since we've been back, so I'll provide those updates and that information to you. On Monday, January 24th, we had 324 total absences. 177 of those were teacher absences, 24 of those went unfilled. We had 98 ESP absences on Monday as well, and 88 of those went unfilled. So for a total of 278 out of 324, they were due to illness. Just wanted to note that, which is about an 85% rate. Today, Tuesday, January 25th, I got fresh information from Laurel. We had 304 absences, so we're starting to trend down a little bit. 162 teachers that were absent, 61 of those were unfilled. 94 ESP positions that were absent, 84 of those were unfilled. And again, about 85% of that due to illness as well. An update, and I give this almost every board presentation on our nursing staff. We continue to be short, but I did get a little bit of an optimistic outlook from our district nurse, Melissa Senes. We have onboarded 4 additional clerical support IEA staff that I spoke about last week. They were spun up and trained on Friday, and they're doing in-person training at sites this week, so we hope to extend and add additional staff to the nursing and the front office support to manage our COVID mitigation strategies. We've also added 1 additional support nurse that Mrs. Senes is sourced through a temporary agency or a staffing agency, so that adds 5 to our situation. We continue to be short. We continue to be challenged with that, but we are feeling a little bit better as we continue to bring on more people, and I know Melissa's working hard, as well as student services, to continue to help fill and support that important role in our buildings. I can't go without saying how things are going on the school bus driver situation. I'll give you just a quick update on that. We were very successful on Monday and Tuesday in bringing people back. Prior to the online transition, we were managing our driver situation pretty well, but we were cutting and reducing routes to cover routes because we were anywhere from 20 to 40 drivers short on a daily basis as well. It's pretty hard. I mean, you can get kids into school and maybe find a space for them, but if you can't get them to school, it makes it difficult. Our team on the busing side has been doing a phenomenal job, especially when we compare it against what's occurring across the metro, where a lot of districts are not running routes at all. We've continued to do that through some aggressive planning and route design and things that our transportation team is doing. So it's been good. And on days like today and yesterday, spending a lot of time outside. Every time that door opens, you get a nice winter blast, and it reminds you why you love Minnesota. These drivers and our bus ESPs and our staff that go outside, I commend them for their work, because today, these days like today, it's kind of hazardous and it's hard. So I appreciate their effort, and I can't go without saying that. In a little bit, Dave will provide you some updates on vaccination rates and share with you where we're at with that. Again, we continue to have booster shots available for 5 through 11. I know there's been a lot of conversation on access. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then Dave will also provide you with an update on rapid antigen testing and some of the stuff that we've been doing in that area. And then lastly, I'll come back and spend a little bit of time and talk about the new masking resolution and how we want to navigate that. So I'll turn it over to Colin, who's going to provide you with a kind of a general update on some of our stats. We've kind of tightened it up and freshened it up a little bit, so I'll turn it over to Colin.
All right. Thank you, sir. Good evening. So as Troy said, we sort of pared this down to keep us local to our district, as that's most relevant. So as you look at this sheet, this is a comparison of districts in our geographical area that we've pulled from the University of Minnesota's website from Biostatistics. So again, Osseo is trending slightly higher than the average school district around us, but every district is trending in the same direction. As you can note, it's been up since December. So we just like to keep this in view that every district around us is going through similar things that we are. And as we advance to the next slide here, we're going to note this is the Osseo area specific stats. So as you saw of the reporting week for the 24th, which ended last night at 11:59, we did see a slight uptick in total positive cases reported to the district at 448, which is up from 416 from the previous week. And we saw a slight rise of 5 positive staff members in that same range, with a bigger increase in our students. We still see a pretty even split between secondary and elementary students, so there isn't one area of our district that is more largely impacted than the other. So as we continue on, the next slide here is something that you've been asking for, and we're keeping up to date. So this is symptomatic and positive cases by site. And as I shared last week at the work session, this graph is going to look much different now with a 5-day quarantine return on day 6 than it did with a 10-day quarantine return on day 11. The reason for that is the overlap, right? So as we return students and staff more quickly, the total percentage of all of these buildings is going to trend lower than it would have if we kept the 10-day quarantine. So with that, we have a few sites that we like to keep a close eye on based on some of these numbers, but no large issues. A lot of these cases, again, were from last week when we were in online learning, so there were no exposures to the sites. So as we know right now, there are no issues around the district from a classroom exposure standpoint. So as of right now, that's where we stand. And we're going to, Dave is going to come up and continue the presentation with vaccinations.
Thank you, Colin. Good evening. Before you is the vaccination rates by location that we pulled in early January. The vaccination rate is basically anybody that has had 2 or more of the COVID vaccines. When we look at kind of our groupings of our schools, right now 27% of all of our elementary students have had 2 doses of the COVID vaccine. 51% of our middle school students have received 2 doses of the COVID vaccine. 65% of our high school students have received the 2 doses. When we look at all of our students combined, that is 37% of all of our students have had 2 or more doses of the COVID vaccine. Lastly, that last column there, 84% of our staff have received 2 or more doses of the COVID vaccine. As we always do, we always like to call out vaccination clinics in and around our community. There is 2 coming up at the Brookdale Library in Brooklyn Center this Thursday and next Thursday. And then Saturday, February 5th and Wednesday, February 9th, there's one in, the one on Saturday, February 5th is in St. Louis Park, and then the one on February 9th is in Eden Prairie. Hennepin County at their COVID vaccination clinics are offering $50 Visa gift cards for those that are receiving their first, second dose or the booster shot as well. So those are while supplies last. You can find out more information on where vaccination clinics are being held on the Hennepin County website, through the MDH vaccination website as well as our district COVID hub. In addition, we have reached out to Hennepin County and the Minnesota Department of Health about hosting some vaccination clinics in our district as well. You may recall back in late November, early December, we hosted 4 COVID vaccination clinics across our district. So we're looking to partner with Hennepin County or the Minnesota Department of Health about future ones as well. Next, I'll give you an update about our rapid antigen testing. One of our goals with the rapid antigen testing is the sooner we can identify those that are COVID positive, and it makes it much easier as far as mitigating, as far as removing them from school and limiting the spread in school. So that's been one of our primary mitigation is with the availability of the rapid antigen testing, is to identify early who may be COVID positive. As you've heard, that COVID tests such as these have been difficult to come by. But in our district, we were able to secure quite a few of those and get those in the hands of our families. We've offered 2 rounds to our families to pick up COVID tests or have them sent home with their students. And so far, we've distributed over 13,000 COVID tests to our district families. We also are performing COVID antigen testing at our sites for students that are symptomatic or staff that present symptomatic while on site. For students to be tested on site, we need to have a consent form on file. We have over 4,400 consent forms on file, and to this date, we've performed over 1,000 tests within the district and had over 174 of those being positive. I was out at a site yesterday and I was talking to the health office about the testing that they've been doing in their health office. And the good news to me was they said the number that they've been doing has actually been decreasing. And they said the reason that's been decreasing is because families have been keeping their students that are ill at home, which is exactly what we want, that if students are ill, to stay home and to seek testing. But those numbers actually have gone down a little bit just because families have been keeping ill students home, which is good to hear. We are also working with the state to also order additional test kits, and so we're hoping to get 2 more large quantities to get these out to our families, so to have those rapid antigen test kits available at home for when they need it. In addition to the rapid antigen test, we've also began distributing just yesterday the KN95 masks for our staff. So we got an allotment in so we can get those in the hands of our staff as well. And that distribution, like I said, just started happening yesterday and today. And we've also had the ability to order additional masks through the state for students and staff, and we're getting 13,000 additional KN95 masks. So more to come on those. So next, I'll turn it back to Troy.
Thanks, Dave and Colin, for the update. Next, I'll present our new masking resolution proposal. On the rapid antigen testing, I just wanted to share too, especially since we have a lot of site-based staff here. We do have, as Dave mentioned, a large order coming, and we hope to have that in the next coming weeks and be able to provide additional testing opportunities for staff and students from the comfort and safety of their home as well. So we hopefully can keep promoting testing at home before kids get to school, so we can continue to provide a safe environment. So with that, I want to present our new mask requirement proposal tonight to the school board. As Superintendent McIntyre mentioned earlier, you've had a strong interest, board members, in a way to transition off of a permanent masking resolution and look at a site-based solution. So we spent a lot of time trying to consider what type of measurements and what type of data we could use to make some informed decisions. And as we sat down and talked through this, there was a lot of hours put into it to try to determine a fair and equitable and informed type of process. And so that's what I'll share with you tonight. Tonight we will propose a new masking resolution that includes a plan on how masking will be considered based on site-based data attributed to illness. And we'll talk a little bit how we've come to that. We're trying to align our masking mitigation to what is happening within our buildings. Data has evolved over time, so as we began this back in August of this year and even the previous year with the governor's mandate, things have changed. And as I've come to the board each time, we've added different layers of mitigation each time to provide a safe place, because we know, and we heard tonight from our student leaders that were here as well, that learning in person is the option that is most preferred by both our students and I believe our staff. And so we continue to provide those resources, and that's what I task my team with each time. So data has evolved, and I've shared that, and response times and things in the environment have changed in the last year. And so as we looked at that, we talked hard and long about how we could take data and use it from our site-based information to make informed decisions. Some of the things that have changed is PCR testing results. A lot of that information, we've distributed 13,000. The federal government is distributing 400 million. The state has also provided a bunch as well. So that data is no longer showing up in most of our test results. So how do we apply some of that thinking? And so those are some of the attributes that we're looking at. Quarantine times have changed. We went from 10 days to 5 days, so how does that apply and what things have we applied there? Data is showing different experiences amongst sites as well, just like it was among cities and counties. So we're considering that. We also always want to make sure that the safety of our students and staff are at the front of our decision making. That's very important. Our new plan with a stoplight approach of green, yellow, and red, you'll learn more about that. So we want to keep it simple when we describe and express how we're going to present masking changes and shifts within buildings. So ask Kay to shift the slide. So when we decided to focus on site-based data, we needed to determine what data is readily available and what was consistent. In reviewing this criteria, we determined that all schools take student and staff daily attendance. An average can be calculated based on the data pulled from Synergy, our student and frontline management for staff. So Synergy for students and frontline management for staff. Sorry about that. Historical monthly absent rates can be calculated and used to compare current absences against pre-pandemic absences for students and staff. When we looked at this, we took a snapshot of an entire month in January of 2019 and January of 2020, and we took and came up with a 2-year average for absenteeisms in grade level spans. For elementary, our average pre-pandemic was 4.1. For middle school, it was 3.3. For high school, it was 5.2. And for our ALC, it was 28.3. We do have other programs at ECFE and ECSC. Some data is available for students and some is not. And then for staff, we have entire staff data for all of our program sites. Based on that historical data information, we decided we need to come up with a benchmark or a threshold to determine our masking practices moving forward. We set a benchmark from our data snapshot that we took in 19 and 20 pre-pandemic. To do this, we took a real close look at the historic data and found that the historic data average was between 3.3 and 5.2. Proposing a benchmark requires consideration for the current pandemic and mitigations. Our team doesn't take this lightly because we've been working very hard to provide the safest environment for our students and our staff and our families. In doing so, you may recall how school districts are given guidance by MD and MDH on ILI, which is influenza-like illnesses, annually, and we take action and mitigation strategies for our schools when we see sites hit approximately 5% threshold in a normal school year without a pandemic, but we may have a flu outbreak. Our teams track that, we report, we respond, and we may adjust the opening and closing of a school based on that. So we thought that was a good threshold to look at, so we began to align our thinking around that historical data for 19 and 20 and align our thinking around the ILI standard of 5%. In order to align all grade spans closest to 5% using our historical data, because we want to drive it on the historical data pre-pandemic, we needed to increase our average illness rate up to 50% in order to establish the closest benchmarks at or above 5%. And I think the 50% is important to note because, okay, we use the 50% in order to establish that benchmark and provide some consideration for all the mitigation and the considerations around masking in general. During a pandemic, it's important to establish benchmarks that provide the safety of environments and students. At the same time, when schools have low illness and absentee rates, mask options for families can be provided if done right. Next, I'll talk about the 3 grade level matrix proposals. Starting with our elementary, based on our information, our averages for 2 years and then our benchmark matrix, we have determined that a site that would report a 0 to 4.1 absentee for illness would be green with no mask required. A site that reports 4.2 to 6.1 would be yellow, and we'd strongly recommend masking. And a site at 6.2 or greater, red would be red and mask would be required. So it's a green, yellow, red. At the middle school level, again, these are based on grade spans. Our middle school model would be 0 to 3.2 would be green, no mask required. And for 3.3 to 4.9 would be yellow, and 4.9 plus would be red. For our high school, again, based on our 2-year averages and our matrix, up to 5.2 and it'd be green. 5.3 to 7.8 would be yellow, and 7.9 or greater would be mask required. And lastly, I wanted to, in the proposal, just give you an example. If we looked at 2 weeks in January, where we would fall right now if this masking resolution was applied today. As you take a look at the information, this is the elementary sites on a 2-week period. You'll see that we have 1 site on week 1, or 2 sites on week 1 that are green, a handful of sites that are yellow, and a number of sites that are red based on their attendance or their absentee rate for illness within their site. In week 2, you'll see, and we had a spike, as many of you know, we moved to online. We have 1 site that is maintained green, and most of the rest of our sites are red, and a few are yellow. In the secondary site, an example there would be our 3 comprehensive high schools in our ALC. The first week, all of our high schools, or our middle schools, and most of our high schools in our ALC would be yellow or red. And then our second week, when our numbers surged, all of our schools would be red with the exception of Maple Grove Senior High, which would be yellow. And so as we look at that, the resolution recommendation, I'm going to turn it over to Corey so he can provide additional details on that.
So a couple additional clarification points in this proposed model. So we would take Monday through Thursday averages, and Troy, you can fill in what I miss here, but we would get a weekly calculation, and then on that Friday communicate with the school and that school community what the masking requirement, if there is one, whether it's recommended or required for the following week. And we would take that data every week, so there's a week-by-week real-time analysis, no lag, no 14-day wait, none of those things. It's really driven by our current absence rates. And we felt like that 50% threshold was an indication of a significant, health issue there, whether it's COVID or flu or strep or whatever the illness might be. That they're all really just in the idea of illness. The reason for the February 18th date is a couple things. With us coming back in person yesterday, as you heard earlier, we have improvements in our illnesses, but we still have 300 people ill, and we still have unfilled classrooms. Extending the current mask requirement to February 18th gives us a few more weeks for the stabilization of our operations, to do everything we can to keep our staff healthy, to be able to operate and keep our schools open, and also allow this peak or this surge to begin to improve. We're hearing, that either has started to happen or will be very soon in the next few days, but that won't happen in a day or two. That's going to take a couple weeks to improve. So the window is to give us plenty of time here to do the planning, allow conditions to improve, allow our operations to reestablish themselves, and as we transition to this model, likely have much lower illness rates and case rates, which would really benefit our system. So and there's a number of operational considerations as well. The faster we go, the more there's a lot of logistical things that would go into this as well that we need to get in place, that we would build out once we are moving this forward. So those are, probably I'll stop there, and maybe I'll just highlight the 2 key things in the new resolution. There's really 2 elements here. One is extending that resolution as it stands till the 18th, and then transitioning to this model you just saw. And that allows myself and the administration to implement that on a week-by-week basis. And those are the 2 key elements of the resolution: the change in the date, and then also the delegation to the superintendent and the team to manage that model and that process weekly, to be more responsive to our current, week over week situation, as hopefully we see conditions continue to improve, not only in our district, but others and across the metro and across the state. So with that, Chair Dawson-Walton, I'll turn it back to you to facilitate the process regarding the motion.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do, I know we're going to have some questions and discussion from board members, but let's first, I'm going to ask if there is a motion to approve the resolution on mask face coverings as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Director Grady, who did it first? Second by Director Mosqueda Jones, sorry. Is there any discussion? Anybody want to go first? Do you, Director Douglas?
Sure, I can go first.
All right.
Okay, so first I just wanted to say thank you to Superintendent McIntyre and Troy and Colin and Dave and the entire team for really listening to the board's desire to approach this differently and working so hard on bringing another, a different type of model forward on how we can make decisions. I know that it wasn't easy to come up with this. I also want to say that I have spoken with Corey about some of the questions and concerns that I have with the proposed resolution that's before us today, but I do want to talk about those publicly and not just privately. So some of the questions that I have, I'm sorry.
There's some feedback. Yeah.
I'm getting feedback on my mic, I'm sorry. What,
I was just seeing if it was, I could just hear the feedback on your mic.
Yeah, I don't know if it's.
It might be your computer, Director Douglas, if you want to move your computer to the other side of your, just
Thank you.
because those new computers have some weird Bluetooth things.
Thank you. Okay. Anyways, I did want to say that I do appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. Some of the questions that I have about this are, while I understand the intent behind it, there is still no end point in this model. This model basically appears to be indefinite, that it could continue and perpetually, never ending, depending on what illnesses we have in our schools and what season it is. And that is a really significant concern, I know, for a lot of our stakeholder groups who do not want to have masking go indefinitely. A lot of people have expressed that desire quite forcefully. I also have a question that I'd like clarification on, which is the slide, I think that was immediately prior to this one, that was discussing the absence thresholds. How will we disaggregate absences that are due to illness and absences that are due to other causes? And how will those impact the percentage that will initiate a green, yellow, or red stage?
I can start, Troy, you come in and fill in here, so forgive me if I don't capture your questions right. I think your first question was, when will it end? Really, there's a couple factors that are at play. I believe this model actually responds faster when this COVID pandemic improves enough. We're going to see that in our absence rates, and we will be in green. We'll be in that green category. So the illness rates are really a reflection of our best way to kind of also monitor the community spread and the case rates that we're seeing. So at some point in the future, we will continue to evaluate, just like we've done for 2 years, and we come back to the board with, here's now what we know and here's the model. So our intention isn't necessary for this to go on indefinitely. That is not the point. Once this community spread impact is no longer significant, we're going to see our buildings, hopefully, in that green category. And then I think the second, and Troy, fill in if I missed something there, the illness part, I think what Troy will say is that is coded in daily. So when parents call in for their children to be out of school, this is based on those calls being marked from an illness standpoint. So we have that disaggregated as it's called in and entered daily. But you might say it more eloquently than I'm saying it, Troy.
It's a great question. We spent a lot of time wrestling with that and wanted to be as transparent and as clear with that. So our teachers probably know this best when you record attendance for your students, and so do our front offices that have the absentee component of it. There are multiple codes that a student can be coded into when they don't come to school each day. And what we looked at in our data is to record and to track, and this is a deep conversation, was around absenteeism for illness and absenteeism for unexcused. And with unexcused, some could say, well, that could be a lot of different things, right? But what we're finding is and what we're learning by talking to attendance line folks and staff within the buildings, is oftentimes a student may be absent and they don't call in and they're getting a reminder notice from their school that they didn't call in. And that's how that gets recorded. There's 9 or 10 other absentee codes that were not included in that process whatsoever. Another clarification I just want to have, I heard Superintendent McIntyre talked about in clarifying the data and how we collect it. It's actually going to be collected Friday through Thursday of each week. So this Thursday would be last Friday through this Thursday. We'd share that information with the site-based leadership, and the model would shift or maintain depending on that data from the previous week. So we don't skip any days in service. The only exception to that, or the only modification, is if we came into a situation like we just came out of online, there would be no data for the previous week. So we'd start out where we left off the previous time, just like we know spring break is coming up. And so we would take spring break prior, and we'd leave that week that we're absent, and then wait for the next data set to roll in.
Okay, I have a clarifying question on both of your responses, which is that my understanding is that the purpose of having this resolution is to mitigate COVID-19 illness. However, Superintendent McIntyre, you suggested other illnesses. So how will we disaggregate the difference between that? Or will we be still masking when we have an outbreak of flu in a school or strep in a classroom?
Could be. Before the COVID, when we got over 5%, the health department did advise that. So that
They
could,
advised masking?
they would advise mitigation strategies. So we would tackle that depending on the nature of what the illness is, in working with our health professionals.
So it still sounds like to me there would still not be an end in sight year after year after year when classrooms experience high levels of a particular illness, whether it be COVID or something else. Masking still may be implemented at that time. Is that what you're saying?
I guess my response to you, Director Douglas, is I have no intention of this going year over year over year, but we will respond to the mitigation or the situation we're in, and we're trying to respond to your request and the situation we're in right now. And you've hopefully we've demonstrated to you over 2 years we continually reevaluate our data, our protocols, and our decision-making framework. So this isn't designed, and I like what you said at the beginning. I appreciate you acknowledging good intention. And our intention is not for this to go on forever. I don't think any of us want to be wearing masks after tomorrow, honestly, but like it's, we're all really tired of it is my point, right? So we're just trying to come up with a way to get us there safely and get us there as our illness rates do improve, begin to transition away from this and give you that point of, the end point is when we hit those lower thresholds for illness in the building and we get into those green categories, those go away school by school and not just universally across the system. We can really dial that into the environment that our staff and scholars are in. So I can appreciate for any of you on the board that may not agree with this approach. We tried to come up with a way that was driven by actual data at our sites that we can rely on day in and day out. And it's data we've had over time, over the years. So it's not perfect. Neither was any of our other previous models. And if there was one, we'd have found it by now. I really think we hopefully would have. And we're, again, one of the leaders in trying to move into something like this because, again, we think that this is more reliable and more telling and more specific to each school than how now we're transitioning off of that state, county, and city level data, as we mentioned earlier.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I do understand the intent, and I appreciate you clarifying that and letting our community members hear that's what the intention is. The big concern that I have is that's not written in the resolution. There is no strategy for that to go away. There's no end date on this or time for the board to review whether or not this resolution should remain in place. And without that in here, this resolution is indefinite. And that's a very big concern for me when we look at the language that's written in here. Even though the intent isn't to have this go on indefinitely, there is still the potential for it to go indefinitely. And that's a really big concern for me. I don't think we need to continue to go back and forth on that, but that is a big concern when I look at the language there. Another thing that I want to share with my colleagues is a note that was here at my desk, and it is written to the school board, and it is very sweet. children's handwriting. Well, you guys see it too. Dear school board, I really hate wearing masks. It is so annoying to have to wear masks. I can't even see my teachers' faces, and it is hard to have conversations. Please don't make us wear masks anymore. No more masks. Our kids are tired. This is hard for them. And it breaks my heart every time I get a note or a letter from a child and that this is what their experience is. And I do appreciate that this was shared. And I just wanted to make sure that this voice was heard tonight. But I am very concerned about what we're doing to our children. And I just have one final point, which is in the, again, with the language of the resolution, under item, be it resolved, under item 3B5, when communicating with an individual, this is for exceptions, when masks may temporarily be removed. When communicating with an individual who is deaf or hard of hearing, or has a disability, medical condition, or mental health condition that makes communication with that individual while wearing a face covering difficult. So what that means there is you would be able to temporarily remove your mask in that circumstance. And I'd like to point out that we have a really high number of students that fall into this category who are struggling with their learning day in and day out by not being able to see the faces of their teachers and of their peers. We have record numbers of children who are needing speech services because they can't see. Students who are needing additional recovery services because they've lost learning due to their already existing learning disabilities and speech delays. We're continuing to harm these kids by continuing to enforce a mask mandate when they cannot communicate with their peers or their teachers. And I know I have spoken about this at nearly every meeting that we've had, but it still remains and will continue to remain a significant problem for these children. And I cannot, in good conscience, support any masking requirements. I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to do what is best for themselves, but we shouldn't be requiring this for our kids. It's just not appropriate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask or, excuse me, say?
I have a few questions. And this would be for Troy and team and probably Superintendent McIntyre. I know that every decision that we make has a lot of logistics that we aren't intimately aware of. And so can you tell me some logistics that I might not know about about implementing this new metric? And if we were to ask to do it sooner, what would that what would that mean for our staff?
Yeah. Do you want me to take a stab at that first? So a couple things is we built out the recommendation in the last week, pretty much the last 7 days straight, trying to come up with a tool that we could use that we thought was effective, fair, and accurate. And with that, now we have to build out the plan to deploy and roll it out. So some of our, or all of our site-based leaders are just learning about it today, just like many of you were and many of our staff in the audience are as well. So we have to create our communication package. We have to establish some of the safety matrices, and not the safety matrices, but the information, and get that published in our safety plan. We got to create signage that will rotate in and out if the site moves in and out of it. So you have to be able to do that. And I think the most important thing is we just have to have time to inform and communicate to our families so they can plan and expect what to do next, because a site could potentially be a site that's masked 1 week, and the next week they could be strongly recommended. And then a third or fourth week it could be back to required. And so we need to be able to have time to inform our community and our families how that looks, and really our staff too, to prepare them and make sure they understand it. I don't know, did I miss anything there from planning stage and communication?
I have a follow-up question to that communication.
Sure.
My understanding and experience is that we would want all of our communications to be translated in as many languages as possible. And in my experience, especially now, translation services are backed up. So that would take longer, and it would be most equitable that everyone gets communication at the same time in their home language if possible. Is that still a truth? And then are we looking at making those like template communications for, last week our thing was in yellow, so we are going to be doing this particular thing?
Well, I think if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of it a little bit, we have to determine the way we're going to communicate.
Right.
So are we going to put it on building level websites? We're going to put it on the district website? Getting it translated. I can't speak specific for the translation department. I know we do a lot of translations with them. And just like this data, I had to pull 3 people off of their regular jobs and information systems to gather this data. It wasn't a couple quick queries because, to your point, Director Douglas, we want to make sure that the data isn't pulling in a whole bunch of things arbitrarily to make numbers look great and have a resolution. This is very detailed work. And I was very specific with that because I want to be transparent and I want to be reflective of the data. And so it took time, so I pulled people off. And again, with translations, we're pulling people off of their projects to be able to do that. And I think for my team to develop the plan and roll it out, our team is busy responding and reporting and recording COVID cases, and I've brought more staff on. So I got to be able to manage all of that. So that's why I need the extra time to be able to deploy it. I need to be able to give my team time to do their daily work and pull in this project, which does take a lot of time. And we're deploying face masks on a regular basis. That's brand new. The new KN95s has come out. These antigen test kits, that's all been very big for us. And so I have to prioritize all of that and balance it. And I'm going to take some things off the plate to do so. And then I have a whole building COVID coordinator team. It's made up of over 60 people, nurses and assistant principals and other staff. We have to communicate this to them. They need to understand it. Otherwise, I'm sorry, board members will receive a lot of feedback and complaints and concerns. It'll inundate your email boxes as well as my teams, and that just makes it harder. So we want to do it clean and we want to do it right. So that's why we're asking for that time. And I'm going to be just honest. Right now, we're coming off of online learning and a spike that everybody is aware about. If you're on the mass side or you're off the mass side, these 3 weeks help with that spike to get us back on track, to keep our cases down, free my people up in order to deliver it. I think that's the honest way I can say it, or the best way I can say it.
Thank you. I think sometimes we get here and think, well, they can do it. And so I just wanted to get, I don't need the nuts and bolts of everything, but just a little bit more of the background story. Another question I have, if you don't mind. So with the concern of this carrying over for, long periods of time, does anyone have any general idea, I don't think we need specific data, of because we're concerned about, I think the concern is the red zone and having mask requirements. The yellow zone, if it's a choice, right? So do you have any idea of, have we ever been in like that red zone in the last 10 years or so? And if so, was it like a week or something like that?
You mean in historical?
Yeah, just kind of, I'm just saying,
pre-pandemic?
speaking as a teacher, historically, we might have a flu outbreak, and that may have just touched that point, but I've never, and maybe it's for a week.
So unfortunately, I'm not going to try to make
I'm
reference to that.
asking too much,
'Cause here, the only experience that I have is the bird flu, and at that time, I was on another side of school education. It was transportation, and we were handing out sanitizer like crazy. We didn't wear a face mask, and it was a whole different time. But I don't know what the numbers look like at that point. I don't know, Corey, if you've had any experience with it. I can't honestly say that.
I can't remember, in my 25 years, no. Can't remember a time where that was true.
Okay.
I mean, I could say anecdotally as a parent, I've had 3 times, 3 different children who've had classrooms where 50% or more of their class were out ill, but the school did not take any steps to close.
I think we're looking at school-wide, though. We're not looking at classroom-wise.
Or
right?
even district-wide, yeah. I was thinking school or even bigger. And yeah, I think Director Douglas is right. That's same with my own children. It's usually class by class.
Yeah.
I cannot recall, we'd have to dig back, so it's really anecdotal, right? But recall a time where we had to move a building that, we've had to do it since the pandemic started, clearly, but not prior to that I can recall. We'd have to follow up.
Right, so clarification, the metric we're looking yellow,
Strongly
green, yellow,
recommend.
red is school-based, and it's the average of those 5 days.
It's the average of those 5 days.
So if we have a
matched
really
against-
bad day and a bunch of okay days,
Yep.
whatever the average is, that's what
Yep.
we're looking, I just wanted clarification.
And then just
on that.
to clear up too, to make sure, and I don't know if it was clear to everyone, it's students and staff. So I want to make that clear as we try to evaluate this, because it's what is the impact inside the building, inside the classroom?
Right. Thank you, I appreciate it. Those were just a few questions. I'm done.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I do really appreciate the significant effort to develop a model, to be thoughtful. I think it's really important that we see these historical percentages. It's not information that we've seen before. So, and we just got this late this afternoon, so it's been a lot to think about and a lot to digest for such a significant decision tonight. It feels to me that if I look at elementary at 4.1 historical, and it's just another 2% that pushes into masking, I shouldn't say just 2%, but 3.3 to 4.9, 5.2 to 7.8, that feels somewhat narrow to me, especially if it's inclusive of all illnesses. So I don't, that's just my comment, is that feels a bit narrow to me. I am concerned about expanding it to all illnesses in this assessment versus COVID only. It's interesting to me when we look at the community data being very consistent, but all of these districts have different mitigation choices that they've put in place. And from what I can observe, there's not statistically significant differences in the COVID cases amongst the student population. And so that leads to a lot of questions that we've received on why we're making the choices that we are. Again, that's a comment, it's not a question. So that's in my mind as well. So much has changed with Omicron. I mean, even globally, the consensus is, I don't know that I can say there is a consensus when I study what's happening around the world right now. Some countries are rolling it back. Some are saying treat it like an endemic. Here in the U.S., the consensus is breaking down. The new guidance about the efficacy of cloth masks, and we saw in our own system with our mitigation strategies, we still had the outcomes that we had, just like everybody else. So at this point, when I feel that we're really very clearly not at a consensus in the community in terms of the globe and the scientific community, I have to say that we're not in a place of authority to make those decisions for individuals anymore. I've held that position for some time. I think it was alluded to earlier that the good news is that families are keeping sick kids at home. If we can trust families with the decision to know when not to send your child to school, I think we can trust them with the decision on whether their child should be masked or not, whether their child can tolerate masks, whether there's a negative impact to their child about the mask. And so to me, I have to put the families in the proper place with parental authority over what's best for their children. That doesn't mean that nobody's going to mask. People can make their own choices, and we're seeing this at other districts that have mask choices, where many people still mask. It's not a 100% or a 0%. That's not the decision at hand. The people that feel this is the best choice for their child will mask them. Everybody's taken the opportunity of many people have taken the opportunity of the vaccination opportunity, and with no deadline on this, I don't think that's right from our constituents. That I think they expect us to have that proper authority as a school board member, as an elected official, to make significant decisions about masking rather than delegate it indefinitely. So I trust Superintendent McIntyre, I trust the work of the team That's not in question. The question is, where are we at? And how do we honor our families and what's best for their children? And so I cannot support this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Director Grady?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Can you speak to the efficacy of masking and mitigations in schools? Because I do see a problem with the data being confusing for a lot of folks, especially since it's really hard to do a hard science on we're not going to mask some kids and we're going to mask other kids. But maybe you can say something about how masking maybe not perfect, but is still an important part of one of many layers of our mitigation strategies.
Director Grady, I appreciate the question, and I think even piggybacking a little bit on Director Simons, as I considered what you said, and I appreciate your perspective, and as I transition to Director Grady's question, each time I come up here and every time I meet with my team, and those guys get beat up pretty hard regularly, because I'm like, how do we apply this and how do we be consistent, but how do we be fair? Because this is a very split decision. You know, I think each director could surface 20 or 30 representatives in their community that would be for one side and on the other side of it. We continue to present layers approach all the time on everything we do. And I think I said this before, you think of the Swiss cheese event, multiple layers, blocks that cheese, the holes in the cheese or the brick wall. Without all the bricks, it's not a wall, but it could have holes in it. There is no simple answer to any of this. Masking, we know the CDC, MDH, they promote masking, it comes out nonstop. And then for those against it, you could say there's all kinds of studies for or against it. I've read many on both sides. I call it my family school board. We have debates on the weekend. I'm like, here's something I'm proposing to the board on Tuesday. This is how fun my lifestyle is. And I have a split family. I'm not talking in my house, but my family, my parents, and my brothers and sisters. We have these discussions regularly and look at that. And so there's some that are for and some that are against. And as I look at this plan and I talk about that and I talk about some of the other mitigations, there is no perfect plan out there yet. There hasn't been. And I hear that from some of my board members. And other board members are like, keep masking. This thing seems to be working. And that's what the CDC, the MDH, and many of our staff in the buildings, some of our students and our nursing teams would say. So how do we find that balance? And that's what I'm trying to strike here tonight by this presentation. And I think you guys have heard that already. But from an efficacy standpoint, I got to be careful because I don't want to dive into a response like that when it comes to the studies I've read and then the studies that are out there that are against it. I would say that I've always guided myself on the science and the professionals, and masking has always been in that place, and that's why we've continued to have that as part of our resolution. But we've also heard that things are changing and they're evolving, so we take a step back and we look at this and we try to determine what are some options that we can provide, and still, if we're going to provide options and we're going to lean to another side, can we do it safely? And so we looked at information like illnesses, and I know you guys shared some things about illness, like you're going to bring a lot of other illnesses in there. I get that. I don't know any other way to disseminate, and I can tell you, and some of my building coordinators in this room tonight, if I told them to start reporting the type of illnesses in the illness report, I don't think I'd have anybody left, because they just can't do it. And so we have to make a decision based on that. We've got to look at the worst case scenarios, and that's what we're doing when we make that decision on that. The other mitigations that you suggest, or you asked about, Director Grady, we're just applying this KN95. I didn't have to go out and order them and provide them to the staff, but I did because I felt like if it's a resource we can get and provide them to staff, especially as we're considering a proposal that could take, and you saw some sites that are green, I'm sure some of those teachers and staff aren't going to feel comfortable with their kids in front of them, but if I can give them some tools to do their job and feel safer in their environment and meet their requirements, I'm going to do that, along with at the same time the request that the board and other community members are looking for as well. So that's how I'm applying that consideration on that.
Okay.
I don't know if I dialed into your masking, but I got to try to.
I mean, I believe the CDC has said that, yes, cloth masks are not as good as an N95 or a KN95, but some level of mask mitigation is better than none.
Yep.
Now, in terms of the Swiss cheese approach that you've talked about, can you just speak really briefly about the importance of air quality in our school buildings and what the system has done to upgrade those systems and make sure that we're filtering as much bacteria and virus out of the air in our classrooms.
I appreciate you sharing that. There's 2 directors in our system that do the same job, myself and Dale Carlstrom. Dale is our facilities director that spends a lot of time in our construction and remodeling. For many that have been in our district and our system for a long time, we've done a very thorough and enhanced LTFM, long-range or long-term facility maintenance plan. And I believe, I'm quoting this, I might be off by a little bit, but between $40 and $65 million have been spent in the last 6 years on air automation systems, air handling systems. And many of you have heard about our MERV filtering systems in previous presentations. We have a very good air handling system in place. A lot of districts and a lot of the billions of dollars that have been given to school districts have been put into air automation. We were doing that 5 to 7 years prior to this event even happening. I'd love to say we had a crystal ball and we knew this was going to come, but we did not. But we knew that it was important and we knew that we had to improve our system. So we have a very robust system. I feel good about it. A lot of districts have added ancillary type systems. I know the district that my son goes to, they added an ionization system. And our system, we were modifying and adding filters and doing the same thing, or in my opinion, even more than most districts were already.
Thank you. One last question. Given all the data that we're looking at and the mitigations we're still sorting through and trying desperately to be done with this pandemic, are we still in a pandemic, or has this reached a point of being an endemic?
Well, I'm not going to declare myself a government official here. I have an opinion on it. I feel like we're transitioning, but that's only my opinion, folks. I live it every day, and I feel like that's where we're getting to, but I don't know.
Okay, and then one more question, maybe this is more for you, Corey. How are teachers feeling about this time frame? Our teachers are our greatest resource. They are the people that our children want to get back, I guess, besides each other, to get back to see in person. And how are they, we've really pushed everybody to get back on Monday because we really know that our students really needed that in-person direct support. So where are we at with teachers, and what does this time frame allow for our system to recover from, being shut down and having this huge Omicron wave?
Well, it goes without saying that those in the room and their colleagues, it was well described earlier in our public comments. They're overworked, they're stretched, they're tired. It's really, we're asking, and we continue to ask a lot of our staff, and not just in our classrooms, but in our transportation department, in our childcare, in our nurse's office, in our custodians, all the groups across the system. Now, we need those 2 weeks to reset enough to be able to get back to in-person, but anyone in this room will say it's still been a really tough few days, and we are seeing improvements, but it's still very challenging. And I don't know where Kelly went. I saw him hiding back there. Kelly's been meeting with us regularly, Kelly Wilson from EMO, and I met with him and Becky Hessman today. And I think Kelly shared with me last week that their most recent survey of their teachers, 3/4 of them, or 75% roughly, support continuing some level of masking based on where we're at in this moment in time. And the majority of our ESPs are still there as well. And I would add in there our principals, the leaders in our system that we all trust, I trust, to help operate and provide a safe and welcoming environment so that learning can happen, right? And so I wanted to say thank you to Kelly and thank you to Becky and the others for continuing to try to problem solve with us. None of these choices are easy. I wish we had that easy solution. But I think what you've seen, and back to some of the comments made earlier, for this maybe going on indefinitely, the reality is I'm coming back to you like every 2 weeks. And we're talking all the time. So, you are plugged in, well, practically daily. I send you more stuff than you ever want, right? I mean, you're getting more information as a board. So these conversations continue to happen, and we all want the same thing, right? So I believe in our working together with EMO, with our other leadership groups to find the best of the tough choices right now, right? And there is no playbook on this, and that has been probably the hardest thing for our classrooms and for us at the district level is I think everything we've talked about tonight is hard to sort out. There's a lot of moving pieces to this puzzle. We're just trying to give you the best plan we got right now and we continue to evaluate. Troy and his team continue to do that. When we have the next best plan, as we learn and know more, back to my quote earlier, we'll come back to you with the next thing, right? We're not gonna, I think we've proven over the years, we're not gonna, when that's time, we are one of the first districts that come and say, let's try this. I think we can do this to try to get us to where we want to be. Because we all do share the common ground of our students performing and achieving at the highest levels possible. So that was a long-winded response to your question, my apologies, but I felt like it was important to acknowledge that the staff in our system really do want to see this. This keeps it going until we see that data tell us it's time to, school by school, make some changes to recommend, or even when we get to that green part where we're not even recommending anymore. And having a mechanism to do that, because we haven't had that before up till this point. It's been universal, and let's pick a date on the calendar and hope we're right, based on what we know. And that's as good as we could do based on talking with our public health officials, which we do every Thursday. And what has evolved is we know a lot more about what's going on in our buildings now than needing to rely on city, county, or state national data, right? Especially from an operations standpoint, because our goal right now is stay open, be open, as long as we have people and great people to do the services and supports that we need in a standard of care that we expect, without putting anyone at risk severely. So that is the daily, hourly. I love I can't remember our teacher that spoke earlier about waking up in the middle of the night worried about our scholars.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that. I wake up all night every night.
I'm not sure we're sleeping.
My scholars are COVID and other problems.
Troy's texting me at the weirdest times of night, like, here, what about this? And we'll be talking again at 4 a.m. about the weather tomorrow. So I guess I just offer to the board, this is the best we know right now, and we will continue to strive for better and for the next best plan moving forward. At least it's a move. I mean, I feel like the board was clear. You wanted another solution, another option beyond what we've done really for almost 2 years around this. So I know Director Brooks probably wants to get some comments in here, so I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who's working so hard to try to hold everything together for our students during all of this chaos.
Thank you. Dr. Brooks?
Yeah, so I do have some questions. Troy, I guess the first question, just going off of some questions that that Director Mosquito Jones asked. What's the absolute earliest that we can transition to the school-by-school model?
I'll say this, Director Thomas or Director Brooks, to be fair. I asked the superintendent when he asked me to bring this forward if we could have 6 weeks. And he's like, 2 weeks, and I said 5 weeks, and he said 3 weeks, and the reason was just the time, and we were trying to negotiate back and forth, thinking about logistics and everything, and by the time we communicate, create plans, translate, all of that stuff, honestly, I'm bringing forth the best solution I think we can do. You can do things in shortened time spans, like anything else, and again, expecting the results, that's the challenge, engaging that. And I'll be honest, I try to deliver the highest level of results for my department, my responsibilities, because I feel like our students and our staff deserve it. And so that's why I'm conservative at 3 weeks. And 3 weeks was a push for me, I'll be honest with you. And I had to wrangle that out of the superintendent when we were putting this proposal together, because several were talking about what that timeline might look like. And so that's my request, because of everything else that we're doing. We either have to set other priorities like communicating to families and staff about COVID aside to get some of this stuff deployed, and we're gonna apply that pressure to principals and to the COVID teams and stuff. So I ask that consideration and grace. So for me, 3 weeks is what I feel good with. We can do it less, but again, it's gonna be about the impact to the people involved that have to make it happen.
One of the things that you mentioned when you started out was that we came up with this plan within the last 7-ish days, and that there was some consideration that went into making sure that it was fair and equitable.
Sure.
And I see a clear correlation between vaccination rates on the east side of the district and the absent rates in the schools. And so I'm wondering if you can talk through what that consideration was of making sure that this was a fair and equitable path forward.
So that's a good catch, Director Brooks. When it comes to it, we've seen some correlations in just the short few data points that we looked at when we looked at the 2-week snapshot, and then we looked at the full month snapshot from previous years, especially the benchmark in the current 2-week piece, how that looks. You can see some sites. I'll point out one. Basswood was one that was green. And if you remember on the vaccination rate on the presentation, they were a little bit higher. They're in the middle, in the 40s, I believe. Like, my memory doesn't serve me exactly correct there. Maple Grove Senior has a very high vaccination rate, and I assumed there I would see green there, but I didn't. So there's a different spread. There's different things going on, so I have to apply some of that considerations. Director Brooks, you've asked almost every meeting, and I've heard you loud and clear about providing additional vaccination opportunities, which is a huge resource. Again, we have to balance all of these requirements and requests from both the board and the system. And that's why, since the OSHA mandate has completely dropped, I've reallocated some of those individuals to start working with county and state officials on vaccination rates. So when you talk about the thoughtfulness around trying to improve our garden cities, our Palmer Lakes, our Park Brooks, even our park centers is up there a little bit better. Our secondaries have been because they've had a longer time. We're going to continue to focus on those and try to apply more of that. We can't drag kids down to get them vaccinated. All we can do is promote it. So we promote it here, we promote it on our website, and now we're working with MDH and the Hennepin County in that regard. And just in our short conversations this week already, there's some ideas surfacing, but also there's a lot of demand. You know, just this weekend, there was a big article about the kind of the drop-off of 7,500 tests per week, or vaccinations per week that were occurring in the state, down to like 1,200. And now the state said, okay, the holiday break's over, the logistics challenges that they've had getting kids appointments has been challenging. They're working through that. And so now we're tackling it at the same time they're saying they want to re-gear. And I heard that, and I said, let's get partnering with them and try to provide them more space. So that's how we're trying to bridge some of that variance. I will say it's going to take some time, and so there will be sites that will be in the yellow or the red longer than other sites potentially. But there's other attributes. You could have a spread in a school that could occur, which I kind of think is occurring in Maple Grove right now, even though they have a high vax rate, but that could drop off rapidly, which is what we've seen in Omicron to this point. So I need to see more data sets to confirm where this is headed, but that's my feeling from that perspective.
Director Brooks, could I just add on to that? I know you probably got a list, so I'll try to be brief. We've talked long and hard about this, and you know, I think your observations are good ones in the sense that we may have some buildings in our district that have higher illness rates that have lower vaccine rates. And I think the question I ask myself is, well, if we walked away from doing the masking and we don't provide a mitigation strategy that they need, is that equitable? Because now we're going to potentially add to the level of absenteeism that's going on in the system. So until we do everything Troy has talked about and continue to, we've seen the disparities and the impact on our families of color throughout the pandemic. It's in the county data, it's in the city data, it's in the state data. So how, you know, as we work through that, being responsive to the additional mitigation efforts to help counter those barriers. And we've really wrestled with that. So I think being able to do this on a week-by-week basis and being ultra-responsive as quickly as we can seems to make more sense to us than the lagging data we've had to use up to this point. That's becoming honestly less and less useful to us. So I hope that helps.
I think one of the problems that I have with something that you just said is a mitigation strategy. It appears as if we're sort of holding on to this as a mitigation strategy because it's all that we have and all that we know. But it doesn't appear that it has been effective. And so that's the part that I've been struggling with. We just got this resolution, 5 hours ago, and it's been a lot to process, but that's, I think, one of the things that I'm struggling with the most is that it doesn't appear to be effective, and we still don't have data that suggests that it is in this current environment.
I don't know.
And
Well, I just would add, my fear is by not doing it, we'd have seen even greater illness and greater absenteeism with staff and students. And why wouldn't we do everything we possibly can until we know either way? Right? We all have the data we look at and maybe can make the arguments we're going to make, so I will acknowledge that. But when you charge me with taking care of 4,000 employees and 20,000 students, I feel like I gotta do everything I possibly can. And my fear is, if we weren't doing everything we could, what would it really look like? That scares me. I don't have the answer to it, but it's a question that does keep me up. So, thank you for letting me interject that.
Well, actually, one of the questions that I had was on another mitigation strategy that we just exercised recently, which was distance learning. I don't see anywhere in the current model a move to distance learning based on absences. And I'm just wondering if there was a reason behind that.
We are still developing that. I think I've shared with the board that we're trying to dial in what is the thresholds. So with our focus on being in person and staying operating, the focus on that is what is the criteria for a building or a district move. What we learned the last 2 weeks was, as we covered the other night, when we hit 15% in more than half the buildings, and across multiple departments, not just classrooms, that was what really tipped us into not being able to safely operate. So this is around the masking piece, not around so much the operational piece that was really all about. That was simply, can we keep the doors open, the buses running, the food flowing, adults in the classrooms, you know, and you heard the stories, we haven't even been able to do that. So and those are different kind of metrics. This was really narrowly focused on trying to move what's next on our masking requirement. So that's still being worked on, and I know I've shared some initial ideas on where we're headed with that as well internally.
Can I just share one response to your comments, Director Brooks? You mentioned that we're hanging on to this potential mitigation strategy. We have 7, 8, maybe 9 very solid mitigation strategies. People may disagree with different ones, and it's kind of like, is it a buffet or not? And that's kind of the question at hand. I would say every mitigation strategy that we apply and we use, we try to use science and fact and information, and then we adjust and we step back and then we adjust. And, you know, including yourself, Director Brooks, and all of the board, you've asked us to step back and adjust, and we've done that numerous times. But each adjustment takes hundreds of hours and resources to plan, design, and come up with another plan. And so, as you mentioned, we only gave it to you 7 hours ago. We're stepping back and adjusting. I would say, based on the online experience and coming back to school, I would have argued for masking to continue. But I know that this was very important to the board. It was very important to the community. It was very important to the charge of the superintendent to come up with another solution at a time where a lot of districts, and I'm going to give another one. I've shared this with you guys before. My family operates in 4 districts. One has strongly recommended it right now. And last week, they moved to required, and they've been in strongly recommended almost the whole school year. And yet today, we're bringing forward another adjustment, but it takes that time, and it takes that time to deploy it. And I know this is your opinion and your concern, and again, for us, it's the same thing. We're trying to step in, and operationalizing each of these mitigation strategies takes a lot of time and resources, and that's all we're trying to do at the and then manage the pandemic at the same time and keep the doors open. So. Just wanted to share.
I think I take issue with the language that we're fully ending the mask requirement when the resolution appears to be pulling us in a direction of a school-by-school model, which would likely, based on the information we have today, still have masks required in certain schools. And so I just want to be clear in the language that we're using. We are making some adjustments and pivoting, but we are still, based on this resolution, if it were to pass, requiring masks in schools. And it may not be a universal mandate across the entire district, but it looks like a good chunk of the district would still be impacted. And a lot of the emails that we've been receiving, I think one of the issues that has been expressed, or concerns that have been expressed, and it was expressed from board members today, as well as community members, is the turning over the decision to the superintendent to make those COVID-19 mitigation decisions. And maybe this is for Kelsey or for the superintendent, But can you just remind us of our ability to bring future decisions back to the board for discussion or additional consideration, and then what the process would be for that?
Do you want to take it? Or do you-
Go ahead if you'd like. I've been talking a lot, so.
Yeah, I mean, Corey, Superintendent McIntyre, has always come back to the board. We always get information to understand, how the decisions are being made from, learning models, and then now, of course, with the mask mandate. And so I think that we'll continue that ability to, as board members, anybody can talk to Superintendent McIntyre and myself if there is, any concern, anything you want to bring forward on, we have our agenda setting protocols as well. Superintendent McIntyre, do you have anything else?
Well, yeah, we've made a lot of big decisions in a very small period of time because we've tried to be responsive to the rapid changes of what's been going on with this variant and the impact on really, bottom line, the impact on our staff and the amount of illnesses. So that is not lost on us. It's every district in the metro has been literally reacting to this. I guess I fall back on this is the best recommendation we can give you. If the board chooses to vote and do something different, we'll follow those orders too. Like, I will keep coming back to you with information. I'll keep coming back to you with recommendations, and it's for you to decide. This particular model requires us to make decisions week over week. So, that to me, you want the administration to be making those decisions based on this model. To do that, I don't think the board has any interest in deciding from a governance role on this model week over week and having meetings like that. So the intent was to be clear that the authority of implementing this lands with myself and our team. That's really the intention behind it. But along the way, I'm going to continue to bring forward updates weekly at work sessions, at board meetings like we've done. I think Chair Dawson Walton said that well. So, and when each of you reach out individually, if I hear there's concerns, we bring it forward. That has been our process. I wouldn't move something forward without the board really showing their support, whatever that looks like. So if there's not support, at least from the majority of the board on our recommendation, then we will do what you direct us to do. We came to you with our best recommendation. And at this point in time, it's kind of up to you to decide if you want us to move this forward or do something different.
Could I just comment on your question? So it's been my experience serving with all of you that if you would like to bring this issue back for the board to address in a formal way, you will need the support of 4 board members in order to have it come to a vote. So if that's what you're asking about, the actual protocol, thus far, every time that I've brought forward an action, I have not received the support, and it has not been on the agenda, and we have not been able to have that discussion or vote on it. And that's part of the process. You would have to make a formal motion, and so if that's a big concern for you, I hope that you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
We do have an agreed agenda setting protocol that we've all supported. So.
Superintendent, just want to say thank you for answering that. It's one of the 2 bullet points on the screen right now. So, and a concern that came in, I think, pretty consistently. So just wanted to address that. The other thing that I wanted to address was actually one of the points that Director Douglas made about students receiving speech services that are experiencing mental health issues or that may have some sort of a disability. And the communication issues with mass. In the clause that was mentioned, which is, yeah, so item 5 under 3B. Am I wrong to assume that based on this clause, if the students in those situations and staff would be able to remove their masks if they're experiencing difficulty communicating? It seems
That is correct, and I'll
Pretty
ask,
straightforward.
and I know Mr. Palmetier has also been probably heavily involved with our special education department, so there are clearly, on a case-by-case basis, IEP team decisions around this as well, based on the individual needs of a student as well. So I don't know, I would imagine, Tim, we've worked through this, and I know there are alternative accommodations kind of fall into this exemption piece, but it's probably determined by IEP teams on a case-by-case basis, is my.
Absolutely, I mean, that's certainly the intent of going to make those types of exceptions, and understand that students are gonna have unique needs, which are gonna warrant removing of a mask to communicate or to articulate, or to demonstrate articulation, for example. I know that a number of our buildings actually do have, I believe, shields and other alternative means of addressing those types of situations. So that certainly is the intent. And we certainly recognize that, as it's probably even related in other areas here, where we recognize that students with unique needs or disabilities, exceptions are being made.
And just to confirm, this has already been happening. This is nothing new. Thank you.
That's correct, and it's always been in the resolution. So this particular clause is not new to this resolution. It's been through the prior two iterations.
May I comment on that just briefly? So, yes, this has been in place, and yes, students have been receiving accommodations. The problem is that if you're a student that needs to be able to see other people's mouths move, you are not receiving that through the entirety of your day. You're getting maybe 20 minutes a day, but typically 40 minutes a week, where you are seeing your speech instructor's mouth moving when you're receiving your services. To me, that's not sufficient, nor is it appropriate or fair or an equal opportunity to education for any of those students.
If I could just comment on one point here. I mean, that's I think a fair point. And we're always balancing these types of decisions. We have students who are medically fragile, who maybe are autoimmune compromised, whose parents also would be articulating concerns about not having protections in place. And so we're constantly balancing that. And so it's a hard decision. At least when it comes to disability, working on a case-by-case basis is maybe the best we can do, and it's imperfect. And kids are being impacted in so many ways. So I don't dispute that overall issue, except we're just balancing. We're constantly balancing.
I just want to just share that I appreciate you bringing that perspective forward. As a parent of both children who have learning disabilities and speech delays and medically complex children, I get that that's a very difficult paradox that our families are really experiencing. There's a lot of fear when you have a medically fragile child, and I've experienced that myself. I understand it very much, but it is still impacting very large numbers of students to force them to be in classrooms all week and not be able to get the services that they need, which includes being able to see people's faces and mouths move.
All right, Director Douglas, do you have anything else you wanted to?
I'm done, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, first I just want to say thank you to the board for giving me some extra time to process all this. And thank you to all the staff members that showed up and are still with us today. You know, for me, it appears that my comments from the November meeting are known widely across the district. My frustration with this entire situation, and at least at the time, the data that we had. I want to say thank you to administrative staff for the changes that were made and what was presented today, and actually presenting us with a model and a different pathway forward than what we've been experiencing. I know that that was a lot of work, you know, to get to this point. And Troy, I always think about the workload of managing all of this for your team. Not to mention the the chaos that seems to have been caused in our actual schools with so many staff members being out. But, you know, as I am processing this, I think where I'm landing is wanting to make sure that we get this right as we transition to this new model. I am in support, and this shouldn't be a surprise, of removing the district-wide mandate. And I am in support of moving to the school-by-school model. I think one of the things that I struggle with, and I said this already, is whether or not the masks are effective. And it's seeming like I'll never have a complete answer to that. I also struggle with the fact that so much of the pressure and the frustration from the community is being directed at our school district. It seems like we are the ones having to combat this virus on our own, with the lack of coordination from our cities. You know, our two biggest cities in the district do not have mask mandates. There seems to be a lack of coordination in terms of vaccination clinics, testing availability, and then coordination from the state and federal government. And so that's where I continue to struggle. But I also think about the east side of the district where I do live, and the rates that, the case rates that we have in my area. And I struggle with getting rid of this mitigation strategy of a mask, even if I don't feel it's effective. I feel like we need something. And so I am supportive of the model that we have today, and I will be supporting it.
All right, thank you. I always feel like that by the time it gets to me, it's like everybody's exhausted. I'll try to make this short, but I just want to honestly, I just want to thank my fellow board members. We have, I think this conversation today has been the most civil, and we've really modeled how we want being able to come. We come from such a diverse district that, you know, not one person is going to represent one constituency. We represent the entire district, and I think that that really matters. I mean, you just heard the perspectives today, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the respect that we had during this really, really hard, emotional, and, you know, dividing, really, conversation around masks. One question I did have about the resolution, and I'm sorry if you covered this already, but, you know, with the resolution remains in effect until February 18th. And then after that, like, how does it work with extracurricular activities in our building in the evenings then?
Yeah, that we would just follow the Minnesota State High School League rules,
okay.
Right? So their guidance, I believe, strongly recommend, and we just continue to follow what their guidance is, as we've basically tried to do throughout the 2+ years.
I remember at one point, I think Director Simons brought up some of the faith communities that use their buildings and things on weekends or at night. I mean, how does that play out?
So this particular model really tackles the during the school day piece, right? So in the evenings or on the, you know, we're going to follow High School League on those activities that are sanctioned there. I don't think Brian's in here, but the current resolution is, you know, in every site all the time. And this would transition to the school day part. So, because the use of a building at night is different people than who are there during the day, every day, in much larger quantities or numbers of people, right? So we would be shifting in that regard.
Okay, thank you. I think that,
I think there's, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, there was, if we continue to the 18th, you know, that'll stay there, and then that shift happens when we shift to this school-by-school approach.
Okay. You know, Trey, like you, my family has discussions regularly about masks, and, you know, one of the hardest things as a board member is to try to remove your personal bias or feelings towards something for the greater good of the entire district. I think the last several years we've seen, you know, the impact this pandemic on our scholars and our families, on our caregivers and our educators. And so, you know, I think we do, I mean, we're all humans too, right? And so we're all trying to navigate this. Never been through a pandemic before. I don't think anybody has. And you know, our schools continue to be at the forefront of all of the controversy, you know, and all the frustration from many sides. And so I do want to thank you and your team and your leadership, Superintendent McIntyre. I do think what we've asked for is metrics. What we've asked for is an end date. What we've asked for is a way we can really monitor at a local school level masking and mitigation strategies. And so I do support the resolution, and so at this time, we are going to take a vote. All right, so all in favor of the 2021-2022 COVID-19 preparedness plan resolution on face mask covering, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion, actually, should we do a roll call vote?
Director Douglas?
Nay.
Director Brooks?
Aye.
Director Mosqueda-Jones?
Aye.
Director Dawson-Walton?
Aye.
Director Simons?
Nay.
Director Grady?
Aye.
4-2.
All right, thank you. Motion passes 4-2. The next action item is the approval of gifts to the district totaling $31,441.69. Is there a motion to approve gifts to the district in the amount of $31,441.69?
So moved. Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Oh, yeah,
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry.
Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right, all opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, at this time, the board will be taking a brief recess and reconvening in the forum room and for a closed session. This session will be closed pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 for labor negotiations with teachers and principals. There's a motion to recess for the regular meeting for 10 minutes and reconvene in the forum. Is there a motion to recess?
So moved.
Second? All right.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right. Motion passes 6-0, and the meeting is recessed at 8:07 p.m.
Hey,
Thank you.
teachers, thank you. Thanks for sitting through that whole thing.